What happens when the gentlest babysitter in town becomes the healer of the mountains? This is the story of Yeti Bob the Healer, a tale of care, courage, and the heart of a giant. High in the misty mountains, where pine trees stretch tall and streams sparkle like silver ribbons, lived Yeti Bob. His days were usually filled with joy: tea parties on the hillside, games with the children, laughter that rolled down the valleys like thunder made soft. But the mountains are more than a playground. They can be dangerous, wild, and unpredictable. And sometimes both people and animals find themselves in trouble. This story is not about games or silly chaos. It's about compassion. It's about what happens when strength is used not to frighten, but to heal. And it's about how the biggest heart in the mountains belonged to a gentle giant named Bob. One crisp morning, Bob set out with his basket, a sturdy thing woven by the children themselves. He loved to gather berries and herbs, bringing them back for picnics and teas. The forest smelled of damp earth and pine needles. Birds sang brightly in the branches above. But then he heard it, a faint sound. At first he thought it was the wind. Then he froze and listened closer. It was a cry, small, trembling, a sound of pain. Bob's heart quickened. He stepped carefully through the ferns until he found it, a small fox caught in an old trap. The rusted iron jaws clung cruelly to its paw. The fox whimpered, baring its teeth. Its body shook. Bob lowered himself to the ground, his voice a soft rumble. "Shh, I will help." With careful hands, he gripped the trap. Metal screeched as he pried it open. The fox yelped once, but then suddenly it was free. Its leg was swollen, bleeding. Bob tore a strip of cloth from his favorite scarf, yes, the one the children had knit for him, and wrapped the paw gently. He set down a handful of berries, coaxing the fox to eat. The fox sniffed, then licked at the fruit, and from that moment on, it followed him. Through the ferns, across the meadow, even into town. When the children saw Bob arrive with a limping fox at his heels, they squealed with delight. "Bob, you made a friend!" Emma cried. Bob chuckled, patting the fox's head. "All friends need healing sometimes." The fox wagged its tail, and the children laughed until their voices echoed across the hills. Just a few days later, a great storm struck the mountains. Thunder cracked, lightning flashed. Rain pounded so hard it turned trails into rivers of mud. When the storm finally passed, Bob knew he had to check the paths. He walked carefully, his paws sinking into the soaked earth. Mist curled between the trees. The world was hushed. That's when he saw it. A figure slumped against a boulder, a hiker, alone. His ankle twisted badly, his pack torn, his face pale. The man looked up and gasped. A Yeti?" His voice trembled, caught between fear and disbelief. Bob stayed still, lowering himself to seem smaller. He placed a paw gently on his chest. "Friend," he said softly. The hiker blinked. For a moment, silence. Then a faint nod. Bob moved forward. Carefully, he lifted the man onto his back. The descent was slow. The trail was steep, slippery, and broken by fallen branches. Each step had to be chosen with care. When the man winced, Bob slowed. When the rain returned in gusts, Bob angled his body, shielding him from the storm. Hours passed, but Bob never stopped. Finally, the roofs of the town came into view. Children ran to meet him. Parents gasped. "He saved me," the hiker whispered as they carried him inside. "I thought he was a monster, but he's a guardian." The town fell silent, then burst into applause. And from that day forward, no one doubted Bob's heart. After the hiker's rescue, something changed. The townsfolk began to see Bob in a new way, not just as the playful babysitter, but as someone they could truly rely on. Soon, whenever someone was hurt, they turned to him. When a sparrow fell from its nest, Bob cradled it in his giant paws and lifted it gently back to safety. When a rabbit limped through the meadow, Bob wrapped its paw with moss and tiny twigs, creating a splint. When Lily scraped her knee at the playground, Bob cleaned the cut with water from the stream and wrapped it carefully in a strip of his scarf. The children giggled, calling him Dr. Bob. One even gave him a toy stethoscope, which he wore proudly, though it dangled ridiculously against his chest fur. Bob never minded. To him, no injury was too small, no cry too quiet. He had the strength of a giant, yes, but he also had patience, gentleness, and care. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the mountains, the children came running, voices frantic. "Bob, a deer, it's hurt!" Bob hurried to the meadow's edge. There, a young deer collapsed on the ground, its leg torn and bleeding. Its chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. Bob's heart ached. He knelt immediately, pulling water from his flask to wash the wound. The deer flinched but did not run. It seemed to sense his gentle intent. "We need herbs," Bob rumbled softly. The children scattered into the fields, returning with handfuls of leaves and flowers. Parents brought lanterns, their glow casting warm circles of light. Bob pressed herbs against the wound, wrapping the leg in long strips of cloth. He stayed with the deer all night, humming a low lullaby that drifted through the meadow like wind in the trees. The fox curled beside him, watching silently. The children and parents formed a circle around them, keeping vigil. At last, when the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, the deer stirred. It stood shakily, looked at Bob, and bowed its head in quiet thanks. Then it limped back into the forest, alive. The town erupted in cheers. The children hugged Bob's legs. Parents wiped tears from their eyes. Bob smiled wearily, but his heart felt full. Healing wasn't just about mending wounds. It was about giving hope. That night, when the town finally settled, Bob climbed the hill above. The stars shone brightly. The fox nestled in his lap, purring softly. Below, he could still hear the children's laughter drifting through the night air. Bob thought of the hiker, safe at home. He thought of the deer, running again in the forest. He thought of every scraped knee, every frightened cry, every life, big or small, that he had touched. The mountains had always been his home, but now he understood something deeper. Home wasn't just the quiet of the pines. It was the people, the children, the animals, all those who trusted him to keep them safe. He wasn't just the babysitter. He wasn't just a friend. He was the healer of the mountains, the gentle guardian everyone could depend on. And so, Yeti Bob became more than a figure of fun and play. He became the caretaker of his town, the healer of both people and animals, and the reminder that even the largest hands can bring the softest comfort. If Yeti Bob's healing heart touched you today, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of kindness and courage.